Welcome to Lead for Good, a podcast for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. This is a show where the audience will meet and get to know top nonprofit leaders. Together, we will take a deep dive into nonprofit leadership, endeavoring to uncover and unpack the most important characteristics, traits, strategies, and actions of successful nonprofit leaders. Through this journey together, we desire to help you, the nonprofit leader, grow your knowledge and capabilities to lead for good. We want you to achieve your full potential as leaders in the sector. So, welcome to the conversation. We're glad you joined us today. Without further delay, let's join our host, Chris Looney, as he interviews yet another extraordinary leader who is truly leading for good. Enjoy the show.
Welcome, everyone, to Lead for Good, a show for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. My name is Chris Looney. I have the good fortune to be your host for this deep dive into nonprofit leadership. Our show really endeavors to cover some of the more important nonprofit leadership topics with the goal of helping the audience reach their full potential as nonprofit leaders. Today, we welcome Claudia Keller, who is the Chief Executive Officer at Second Harvest Food Bank of Orange County, which is a very large regional food bank that envisions a future where all people have food and nutritional security. Claudia is an extraordinary nonprofit leader known well for her collaborative approach, her vision, and her ability to coalesce groups around a compelling vision. So I know the audience is in for a real treat with this interview as we dig into Claudia's leadership journey and explore Claudia's transition from the for-profit world into the nonprofit world, also from development into organizational leadership, and then the collaborations that Claudia has developed with other CEOs and other nonprofits in the community. So welcome to the show, Claudia. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chris. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you. Thank you. And let's start with your leadership origin story. So if you could tell us a little bit about how you became the leader you are today.
Well, my leadership journey, like many, is not a straight line. So I didn't begin in nonprofit leadership. And I often say, coming out of university, I wish I had known this career path was here, but I'm also blessed that I didn't know it was here because I don't know that I would have been the leader I am had I jumped right into it. I started off in for-profit management, retail, fashion, and I was there for, close to 17 years, and I learned a tremendous amount, was given a lot of responsibility, rose up through the ranks, but there was always something missing, kind of in my soul, in my psyche. I knew I wasn't putting everything I had learned in college in the retail fashion world to my best, highest potential. In 2005, working for St. John Knits and being given the opportunity to pursue that company's philanthropic goals. I had the chance to have my feet in both worlds, in the for-profit world and in the nonprofit world, which was a unique opportunity because, quite frankly, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, sure,
I,
sure.
yeah, I was given the task of opening a foundation and kind of exploring that world while still having my foot in doing what I knew what I was doing. And it
Yeah,
was a marvelous opportunity given to me by Marie Gray.
yeah.
Um, and at that point, I thought, darn, I wish I could have done that, right? Be in the nonprofit world. And it was a jumping off point for me where I was able to explore that through volunteering and being on a board. And that really kind of launched me in 2005, where I was given the opportunity to become the executive director of the American Heart Association in Los Angeles, quite serendipitously, because when I was offered the role, in the back of my mind, I thought to myself, are they serious? They're offering this leadership role to a marketing director out of the fashion industry. So that is my origin story, that they believed in me, that I had the skills, because I certainly had the desire. And that was 20 years ago this year.
Oh my gosh, 20 years ago. Oh, that's
Yes.
fascinating. How did you stumble upon a role as a sort of an executive director in Los Angeles, knowing that St. John Knit's, at least as far as I know, was headquartered kind of in Orange
Sure.
County.
Sure. I had sat on the board of the American Heart Association in Orange County. We had done a big cause marketing program raising money around their Go Red for Women here in Orange County. And they had caught wind of it in Los Angeles. And the regional vice president in Los Angeles met me, got to know me. And I was asked to interview for that executive director job in Los Angeles County, and quite literally, I was asked to submit my resume and I said I would. And I think I thought it was a pity offer because they knew
Uh-huh.
I wanted to do that work, but I thought they were just offering it to me as a courtesy, not pity, but as a courtesy. And I forgot to send in my resume. And they called me the next day and they said, "Hey, we don't have your resume yet." And I'm like, "Are you
You're
okay?"
playing hard to get. Are you playing hard to
I
get,
wasn't
Claudia?
playing hard to get. I hadn't even updated the thing. So I sent in what
Right.
I had and they called me for an interview. It was like every day, "Well, can you come in next week?" And again, "Are you serious?" And
Yeah, yeah.
I went to Los Angeles and I interviewed, and they were really wonderful people that saw my skill set in marketing and relationship building and in business. And long story short, they offered me the job, and I had a decision to make because I lived in North Orange County. Would I commute to Los Angeles, literally to downtown LA, to lead that office? And I wanted to work in the nonprofit sector so bad that I said yes.
Yeah.
And I commuted to Los Angeles for 15 years and worked.
15 years. Oh
Yes,
my
yes.
goodness. You
Um,
know how to hold on to jobs for a long time. My
well, I had
goodness.
two jobs in LA. I worked for Hart for about tw 8 years, and then I worked for a smaller nonprofit in South LA. But yeah, so in
Okay.
Los Angeles for a long time before I came back to Orange County in 2020.
Got it. And the other job in LA and when you came back to Orange County, were those in development? Were those in
Um,
fundraising?
so I worked so I was the executive director for Hart, and in 2012 I went to a small education nonprofit in South LA where I wore lots of hats, right?
Yeah,
So
of course.
I went to from a big kind of what I call corporate nonprofit,
Yeah.
national
Sure.
Hart, and went to a much smaller shop where I wore different hats. So I started off as a VP of health and after school programming because I wanted to do program work.
Very
And
good.
then we lost our chief development officer, so I took on that role for a while. And then I was a chief strategy officer for a while. And then I just kind of, when you're in a smaller shop, you wear whatever hat is open. So
Right, right.
great experience for 8 years. I like to say that I got to go to high school 3 days a week, which was great.
Yeah.
And we learned very hands-on what it takes to run a nonprofit because we didn't have a big national organization behind us. We had no safety net. So
Seriously.
that really taught me what it took to run a nonprofit totally hands-on. I had to literally mop the floor sometimes
Right.
on hands and knees. So it was a different learning experience, a different kind of board. And
I don't
so
think people fully appreciate, even in the nonprofit arena, when, let's say, they've only worked for large universities or hospitals, sort of some of the realities that exist for a small community-based nonprofit that is struggling to make payroll every, 2 weeks. It's just a
it's
different reality.
I often tell the folks who are at the food bank, I worked for the big national where, a lot of the money goes back to the national org, to working for a small shop like what you described, where I had to take a pay cut not once but twice because
Yeah,
we had to make budget, right? So I
right.
worked both extremes for my first 15 years of my nonprofit career, which really grounded me in the realities of the nonprofit world.
Yeah. When you came back to Orange County, was it back to Second Harvest Food Bank or was there?
It was
Okay.
2018, and I often tell the story. I probably make it more dramatic than I need to, but when Nicole Sudam, my very good friend, announced her departure, and I didn't know her then, I was on a listserv and I got that job posting in 2018 that there was an opening at Second Harvest Food Bank, and I said it would be nice to work in Orange County after 15 years.
Yeah.
And I threw my hat in the ring, and I went pretty far in the process, but I didn't get the job. Harold Herman, my predecessor,
Of
got the job.
course. I
And
remember.
I was fine with that. I was like,
But was Harold an internal candidate? He was on a
no,
board.
Harold came from for profit as well.
Oh, okay, okay. I guess I should have remembered that, but
Yeah, he was a
thank you. Okay.
restaurant. He was came from the restaurant industry, and he was a wonderful
Ah,
leader. But
okay.
he actually called me up about almost a year into his tenure and wanted to meet with me, and we talked for about a year, and he offered me what ended up being an external affairs position, kind of a combination of chief development officer, government affairs,
Got
public
it.
relations,
Okay.
and I joined the food bank January of 2020 as chief mission officer. I often tell people, do the math
Chief.
there.
Okay. Yeah.
January of 2020 to come and learn.
Right. What was going on then? Yeah, nothing.
Yeah, what was percolating in the world January of
Who knew
2020?
your mission was going to be much more complicated?
Yes. So that was an incredible time to join the food bank, to come back to Orange County.
Yeah.
And Harold was an incredible leader
Good.
for the food bank. And we and the staff of the food bank went through the COVID-19 pandemic together in one of the most incredible journeys of my professional and quite frankly of my personal life for close to 2 years.
Yeah. I never felt like I heard as much about the food bank as I did during that time. I mean, it seemed to be everywhere for good reason. Yeah.
It was it I think we were really called to show our mettle. We
Hmm.
were really called to dig deep because if you think about it, everything that we depend on, food, supply chain was under pressure.
Yeah.
Volunteers we could not have because of social distancing and
Of
lockdown.
course. Yeah.
So at the time of greatest need, everything that we depend on was not there. So we had to reinvent ourselves. The one thing that we could not anticipate was the generosity of the people of Orange County and
Right.
financial the financial resources that eventually poured in really helped reshape how we conduct our mission and helped reshape what I call the modern food bank. The post-COVID food bank is very different today, and I think changed how people view the food bank. And so we are very different today. And I tell people, if you haven't been to the food bank since before COVID, come
Yeah.
visit because we look totally different today.
I bet. I bet. And chances are good you're going to look altogether different again with some of the changes happening to you at the moment. So good thing that you're.
That's another podcast though.
No, we will not go down that rabbit hole today, but suffice it to say, you've proven that you can accommodate the required changes of yourself as a leader in the organization. So, no better person to be at the mantle of an organization like the food bank than you today. Um, Interestingly, then you get the CEO job, and you've had that for quite some time. What's been your favorite role? Professionally over your career? And it doesn't even have to be in nonprofit since you've had both worlds.
Sure. I think I often look at roles that change me as a person.
Yeah.
And I would say that it's two. One in my for-profit world, when I was at St. John Knits, I did have the opportunity to travel internationally to interesting parts of the world like Africa and Indonesia and
Hmm.
Bali, right? And I really got to see parts of the world that I wouldn't got to see otherwise. And I got to see poverty firsthand, and that changed me. And I got to
Okay.
see parts of the world where made me appreciate what we have here in this country and how being a woman here in this country, the privilege that I have. So I would say that my travels around the world that really made me appreciate what it means to be an American. I really value tremendously.
Good.
And then I would say my next favorite role in my nonprofit sector would probably be my role as chief mission officer during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay.
It threw me a curveball, right? I came to learn food banking as I understood it in that moment on January 31st when I arrived at the food bank. And 6 weeks later, I often say I was the new girl on January 31st, right? I didn't know what I didn't know, and all these people
Yeah.
at the bank who were
Just a
my
rookie. Such a rookie.
I was a rookie for 6 weeks, and then I often say that, me and 74 other people, none of us knew how to pandemic, right? That became a verb.
Yeah.
And I learned very quickly what my colleagues were made out of, and they me, and it really brought brought us closer together. It was like brothers in arms, so to speak. That was one of the silver linings from that time. And many of us that are still, some of those folks that are still at the food bank, we share that collegiality and those bonds. And even today, when something is hard, many of us will look at each other and go, it's not COVID hard. So
It's not going hard. Right, right, exactly. I say the same thing. I think we all do. It's hard. Not COVID hard, but it's hard.
that's right.
Yeah. So good. Well, you probably did not um, arrive at your leadership success by your own merits completely and totally. I'm sure there were some probably fortuitous circumstances, and there were some people that really came alongside you and helped you when you needed the support, the mentoring, the whatever it might have been. You mentioned Nicole Saddam as being someone that you connected with that gave you a lift in a moment, you know. But who were some of those folks for you that provided that important mentorship? What did that mean to you, and who were
Sure.
they?
Sure. So I mentioned Roman Bowser, the executive vice president at the American Heart Association, is probably the first person that looked at me from a potential nonprofit executive. I was working in the for-profit sector at St. John Knits,
Hmm.
and he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself as having the potential to take my nonprofit, my for-profit skills as a marketing executive, and he saw those as transferable. And even when I questioned him, I think I said, I mentioned, really? You want me to go lead that
Oh, good.
office?
Yeah.
And he said, yes, seriously, you can do this. You have skills that, maybe we don't teach in the for-profit sector or that aren't, that take a while to teach, so to speak. Everything else you can learn, fundraising you can learn. And so he had a faith in me that maybe I didn't have in myself. So without him, I wouldn't be here, quite frankly, because I don't think anybody else would have had that what I call fast faith in me.
That's
Um,
so important. I mean, I want to pause just for a second because I don't know that that is as often repeated or understood, that these mentors oftentimes the difference is that they not just took a chance, but they saw in this person, you for example, something that you didn't see in yourself, and pushed you or pulled you or gave you confidence, a chance. So I just think that's so wonderful. That makes all the difference in the world.
I think they call it, or they used to call it in the for-profit sector, a sponsor,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
Sponsor somebody and really like hold them up and be there for them when maybe their confidence wanes, which happened in that first year. I was like, what have I gotten myself into? Right.
Right. Of course.
So he was the first, and we still keep in touch.
That's
Uh,
great.
the second would be my CEO and very dear friend, Veronica Melvin at the LA Promise Fund, who was my CEO for 8 years.
Mm,
She really showed me the grit and determination that it takes to lead a nonprofit.
good. Grit
Uh,
and determination. Life lesson as a nonprofit leader.
I mean, we had some very lean budget years. She had, and maybe still has, we're in Orange County, her board may not see this. She has a tough board. She worked in education, and that is a tough realm to be in
Sure.
LA. And she just never wavered from her conviction that every child deserves a quality education. And
Yeah.
so it,
Amen.
she was raising 3 kids, is raising 3 kids, and she was out there morning, noon, and night just advocating for these kids. And I remember thinking at one point, maybe I'll never be a CEO because I don't know if I have what it takes to do what she does. So I went into it with open eyes when I became a CEO because I saw what she did, and we remain good friends today, and I consider her a friend and a sister. And yeah, I call her sometimes when I need to make a hard decision and ask her, what would you do in my shoes? So
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Well, good modeling, and that's so important. You saw firsthand what it takes to survive and thrive as a nonprofit CEO, which is just so much more difficult than anyone in the for-profit world even understands. I mean, it's lost on people in the for-profit world how magnificently complicated and difficult. and dynamic and frustrating being a nonprofit leader is, and wonderful too. They miss
Well,
the joy of it too.
and I often say that a lot of nonprofit leaders I know have incredibly good sense of humors, and I say, well, we have to because the conditions that we work under are often so ridiculous. So
Ridiculous, ridiculous. Yeah,
ridiculous.
so true. It's so true. And we could do a whole nother podcast
Right.
just called, nonprofit ridiculousness. Uh,
I want to do a sitcom with some of my CEO friends.
Yeah, I had thought about writing a sitcom
We talked
about a
about this.
nonprofit.
We
Yeah,
talked
we
about
talked about
this.
this, and mine was an arts organization, a presenting arts organization, because I found in my history that the craziest of the crazy stuff happens in an arts organization where you have such a confluence of different personalities, board members, artists, staff, donors, et cetera. They're all so different and so unique. And in the arts world, you can be unique, and it's almost admired, right?
Yes. I'm
Sometimes.
sure Rick would agree.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we should both pursue those things
Yeah.
for sure. Well, what is the kind of leadership philosophy that you've developed, or some of the leadership philosophies that you kind of embrace or follow as a leader yourself?
I think the two that I lean into the most is, well, first off, is collaboration in all that I do, large and small, internal, external, because as we mentioned, the resources for nonprofits are often limited and not enough. And the work is huge. So
Yeah,
the more brains you can get around the problem, the better.
yeah.
Um,
And I think we're going to dive deep into collaborations as part of our conversation. So that's great.
And the more um, consensus, even if not agreement, but at least agreement sometimes to, agreement to disagree, the easier it is to move forward.
Yeah,
I don't think in the nonprofit sector you can have dictatorial kind of leadership style. The sector is already stretched thin. The conditions can be hard. You often have staffs that are dealing with compassion fatigue, resource scarcity. I can go on and on and on. If you have a leader that doesn't demonstrate compassion in leadership, doesn't take advantage of the resources that are in front of them in their staff and in
yep,
the brain trust that is their staff, that is to me a flagrant kind of misuse of the most abundant resource that is in front of them, and that is the people that have chosen to devote their careers to nonprofits,
right,
and that transcends the borders of the nonprofit. Right, the sector that we're in, other nonprofits, other people are often that often scarce resource of intellect and compassion are beyond the walls of your or our nonprofit and exist in others. So I have found that being collaborative, picking up the phone, taking a challenge that we're dealing with and calling up another leader or somebody else in a different or similar nonprofit and asking, how have you dealt with this?
right,
Or are you dealing with this? How do we tackle this together? The during when the administration changed, I think, we all had challenges we had to deal with. A lot of us got on a weekly call. Hey, what do you know? How are you dealing with this? I think that's how we started kind of grappling with the changes that we're all dealing with, not judging it or fighting it, just dealing with it,
it is what it is, right?
and
And
then moving forward.
it
So
is.
yeah, it is. And I see the two of them as kind of part of the same, where I
Okay,
can build consensus around an idea, not always total agreement. To me, they're part of the same, right? What I was gonna lead into my second one was and it may sound trite, but the work that we do is so serious, is humor and not
yeah,
taking oneself so seriously. Um, I often say that when I'm at the food bank, the greatest thing I hear is laughter, but the work that we do is so serious. But it is not brain surgery either. So if we had an incident at the food bank a couple of months ago where we had some eggs, a substantial amount of eggs that were broken, right? And it was a bummer, and it represented a loss of resources. I'm not going to lie. But I said, you know what? Nobody died, nobody was injured. We will have to replace those, and we will have to figure out how that doesn't happen again. But
Mhm.
let's move on from this. And we will let the broken egg jokes happen later on, but we will learn from this. Because the work is important and it is serious, but it is not brain surgery and nobody got hurt. So I think we have to temper the seriousness of the work that we do with a little bit of humor and compassion for each other. So I often employ that.
That's good. That's good. Humor, compassion, alongside collaboration and consensus. So,
Right.
four wonderful values, characteristics, traits to certainly encourage for other nonprofit leaders. Well, let's jump into collaborations and some of those other things. I want to really focus on some themes with you. Any conversation that we have for this podcast, we can dig into some important themes that really are at the heart of nonprofit work and can help nonprofit executives advance in their own leadership journey by leveling up their skills. And one of the things that I wanted to sort of talk to you about was the transitions between for-profit and nonprofit, and then also development and sort of the executive leadership role, and then that idea of collaborations. Let's start with transitions, and what I'm most interested in was the lessons that you kind of learned in making that transition from the for-profit world into the nonprofit world. It was similar, I think, yours was to many experience, which is sort of just being kind of dropped in to the deep end of the pool in the nonprofit space, which is challenging as opposed to, let's say, coming up through an organization or through different positions, kind of like an apprentice would work in, development and then finance, human resource, and then they go into the CEO role or something like that, right? Yours experience was much different. So, what were the lessons that you learned?
Yeah, so I was kind of dropped into the cockpit, as they say. And I was a little bit disoriented at first, to be honest with you. My experience at the Heart Association in Orange County, I had interacted with staff, and they all were wonderful people, very hardworking. But when you're a board member, your
Yeah,
relationship with staff is very different, right?
so
And
different.
they were wonderful people. They were very nice. It was very
So
warm
you're all
and
so
cuddly.
nice.
Yeah, you're also nice and warm and cuddly. It was very similar. And don't get me wrong, they were all very nice. But I realized that that feeling wasn't going to last, and that I was going to have to take off my board member glasses and put on manager, supervisor glasses and really understand what was happening because the office was underperforming, from a development perspective.
Mhm.
And I also found that in that particular office, and it's a good thing it was 20 years ago, that particular office, there was a very kind of democratic ethos where, the revenue wasn't coming in, and they had this great big team goal. And I'm like, well, that's great, but let me understand, where the money is not coming in. And I really had to kind of double down and understand where the opportunity was, and I'm being euphemistic, where the opportunity wasn't. And I found that much like in the for-profit world, I had to be a heavy. And I didn't expect that I had to do that so soon in my nonprofit
Uh,
role. And my boss at the time, he was the regional executive, said, "You're doing the right thing. This does not happen enough or soon enough in the nonprofit world. So
Right.
keep it up. And I kind of walked away going, oh, that's not what I wanted to hear. But, I had to let some people go very early on. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, this is not what I signed up for, right? And
Yeah.
it wasn't my image of what I would be doing right away. But in retrospect, it was the right thing to do. I brought on my own people. I was able to set expectation of what we needed to do. And I realized that my for-profit experience was very transferable in the nonprofit world. But it was a bit
Seriously.
of a shock in the first 2 months to have to apply those lessons so very quickly.
Yeah.
But it was good reinforcement.
Yeah,
So
that
that was fun.
yeah, it's very good that you're saying this about the fact that you were really forced and encouraged and rewarded, I think, for making those very tough decisions early on, ripping the Band-Aid off, if you will, because I know a lot of executives. Um, Avoid that and suffer unnecessarily. And it's not healthy for the organization to not do that kind of pruning. And, and quite literally, the pruning that you do in the garden is such an interesting model for how you need to steward or take care of an organization, everything from the pruning to the feeding, right? The nourishment of it, the light, just
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. And I also learned that, and this wasn't always my experience in the for-profit world, that subsequent people that I had to exit, because it wasn't the first time I had to do it. Um, a couple of people that I had to let go subsequently came back later and thanked me and said, I'm not a fundraiser at heart. You did the right thing. I liked it so much there, I would have stayed, but the actual guts of the job, I was not doing. I wouldn't have been successful, and I would have stayed there forever had you not, you know, exited me or escorted me out. As a matter of fact, one of them just hit me on LinkedIn this morning, and he's an executive director in a program-based kind of nonprofit. And I was, I'm reminded over and over again that if somebody really isn't a fit in a for-profit or a nonprofit job, the compassionate thing to do is to help them, even though it feels awful sometimes,
Right,
to help them find the right way out and up and on.
right. Yeah, it's
So,
so good because it's so true that on this bus, I don't know why I'm using so many euphemisms, but on this bus, you need to have the right people, of course, and they all have to be sitting in the right
yeah,
spots, the right seats, and that's a difficult job for a nonprofit leader because at the same time you got into this because you want to help people, you want to feel good about everything that you're doing and the impact you're making. And it's not just the external impact of feeding the multitudes, it's also the care and feeding of your team, your staff. And it just
I,
feels awful, right? If you're at the same time having to make some tough choices. But going into the nonprofit world does not mean an end to difficult choices, tough conversations, right? And you learn that really early.
yep, yep.
Yeah. Was there any specific lessons learned from making the transition from some of these other roles from within the organization, whether it's development or mission or program, into the organizational lead role?
Mm, the lesson of the bus, to take your analogy, it really fits anywhere in the organization. So I've applied that anywhere in any part of any of the organization I lead today. And I think what I took from that experience is the broader the broader concept of accountability, right? It's
Mm.
easy in development because the accountability has a number to it, right? So what I've learned is you have to figure out how to hold people accountable if you can't put a number on it, right? Because not every job has an easy
So
number,
good. Yeah,
right?
that is so good.
But you
Yeah.
have to, people crave accountability though. I mean, any job, I mean, imagine any job you had that, whether for us, it's either if you work in development, it's dollars. If you work in sourcing, it's pounds. But if you're a forklift driver, right, how do you hold that person accountable? Well, we
What's
have
the
to figure
score?
out how to do it,
Yeah,
right? What
what's the
is the score,
scorecard? What's the
right?
scorecard for a forklift
Exactly. And
operator?
and and the managers that work in our distribution center figure that out for us, right? And
Yeah.
so not that we want the forklift driver driving like a maniac, in the distribution center. That's not the scorecard, but we figure it out for people. So at the end of the year or the quarter or whenever they're being measured on performance, they know that they're doing a good job or what they have to do to do a good job or move up to the next level. That's what it's all about. It goes beyond keeping your job. It's about, human development and performance, right? So, you know, take that experience at the Heart Association, somebody leaving and being exited out and extrapolating it to how do you grow your human capital? That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. You know who doesn't often have a scorecard and needs one all the time? Board members. Don't laugh too hard.
Yeah,
I
right.
say that as a board member now for several
I am
different
too. I
organizations.
I
Yeah,
am too. I'm
and
guilty as
so
charged.
yeah, so are so many nonprofit leaders. They are board members too. And, um, sometimes I think board members go to boards to avoid accountability, to hide. I certainly do with certain organizations. And then there's other organizations where I really lean in and want to do the best possible job I can and be as productive as I possibly can. And I'm guilty. I feel guilty when I don't have that scorecard, and then I feel very activated and engaged and satisfied when I do, and I know that I'm meeting expectations. So I kind of feel like if we could figure out a way in the nonprofit world to put a scorecard that is reasonable and realistic and meaningful in front of everyone,
Mhm.
everyone would be doing a much better job. But I don't know. Maybe I'm oversimplifying things.
Yep, board engagement is definitely a thing. We try to, keep track of, how we're engaging our board members. Are they coming to events? Are they coming to volunteer? Are they coming to meetings? But that's so surface, right? Because you can be
Sure.
an engaged board member and not do those things, right? Because it's about what are they doing for the organization. We have a great board member who he comes to board meetings, but he gives back in his own way. He really leads our strategy work, and he does that, what I call it, kind of asynchronous. He's doing it like off the regular board clock, and he's
Right.
engaging with staff and engaging with me. And we have a 3-year strategy that really he has crafted with staff
Interesting. Yeah.
on a different timeline. And he has brought his company's resources to bear on this. And, he doesn't come to volunteer in the DC, and, he's missed a board meeting or two, but what he's brought to the organization is real and legit, and everybody sees it. So I think we have to look at board members individually as well and not necessarily see that they check every box. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's the boxes that, you would expect them to check, and then there's a
yeah,
bunch of other boxes that maybe they
yeah,
create for themselves or in partnership
right.
with you. I think
Yeah.
what's interesting for me, and I always talk about this with people, is that accountability doesn't happen just because you put goals in front of someone or tasks in front of someone. It also happens when there's someone that is their handhold or their guide, their support system. So, having someone assigned to board members to help them fulfill the roles that only they really have the opportunity to do and to support the organization with. And oftentimes when I sit on boards, the thing that I realize is that oftentimes I'm not doing the things that I should because no one's calling me out. No one's calling
Mhm.
me to remind me. No one is, giving me the nudge. No one's, God forbid, making me feel bad or calling me to account for
Sure.
these things. And I have no fear that they will,
Sure.
so I have a long list of things that emerge on my schedule every day, and the things that bubble to the top are the ones where I know I'm not going to get away with it if I don't do it, right? So,
So,
anyways,
so this is a neat idea that I'm trying. My wonderful executive assistant is retiring next month, so I'm hiring a new one, but her title will be amended. I've changed the position and she will be executive assistant slash board liaison.
okay,
So
all
half of
right,
her job will be 20 hours of her week will be to manage the board in addition to me.
yeah,
So we've
good,
never had that before.
yeah,
So
no, that's huge.
all things board that I don't get to, she will get to.
Yeah,
So
and that's a good accountability mechanism because certainly you don't have the time to do all of that yourself. But I think also board chairs or certain board members have a responsibility to maintain the accountability of their fellow board members and then undertaking the tasks that they've committed to. So we've kind of gone off our path here in terms of the topics, but they are nonetheless important. But I wanted to make sure before the conversation concluded that we hit on what I know is a favorite topic of yours, and that's collaborations with other nonprofit leaders and with other organizations. And we started hitting on this topic a little bit earlier when you were talking about your philosophy, and I know it's important to you. So if you don't mind, tell me a little bit about what collaborations mean to you, why they're important, and how other leaders should be thinking about collaborations.
So collaboration is in the DNA of Second Harvest Food Bank, right? Just being a food bank, since we are just a hub for food, and I say just, it's a big job, right?
Understood, yeah.
Our existence is predicated on a network of 266 other organizations that distribute food. They're our front line. So
Wow. Okay, good to
we
know.
have to depend on other organizations, schools, nonprofits, senior centers. I mean, you name it. So collaboration is in our DNA. But outside of that, we go above and beyond in the pursuit of our mission. Which is to provide dignified, equitable, and consistent access to nutrition. And really, our old mission, which was really ending hunger, right? We have to look beyond our walls and even beyond our network to figure out this intangible problem we have of food access and food insecurity. Second Harvest, even Feeding America, the national organization, we're not going to do it on our own. And you may be aware that we work with our partners in Garden Grove, with the Orange County Food Bank, and with Abound Food Care. We founded the Orange County Hunger Alliance, which
Right,
today
okay.
has expanded to include Meals on Wheels, 211, Cal Optima, Orange County Grant Makers, the Social Service Administration of the county. So we're growing that organization to try to really get some tread on this problem of food insecurity. And I would say that we have gone into that, and this is the advice I would give to people who are entering into such collaborations, is that we don't know what the outcome is going to be. And that's the hardest thing about these things is I think the human nature is to kind of go in and go, well, this is what I think I can do, and this is what I think I want out of it. And if you're doing that, you've already have failed because you're limiting yourself and what you think is going to happen. So all of us are going in with perhaps a little bit of hope of what we want, but with a much more open mind to what the possible can be when seven large organizations come together.
Yeah.
Last thing I will say is, and this is a little bit more on the personal, is I have found great kind of personal joy, gratification, fun, solace, comfort, whatever you want to call it, in the bonds I have forged with the other CEOs in this county, many of which are female, and you may have heard of us. We call
I
ourselves
have.
we call ourselves the Sisters in Good. And it really came about when Bonnie Pomash of Working Wardrobes, Jennifer Friend of Project Hope Alliance, and Nicole Sudam of Goodwill, we sat around having a glass of wine going, it just feels really good to be able to sit down as CEOs and gripe to each other
Right.
because we can't gripe to our staffs, we can't gripe to our boards, but these seats that we're in are quite unique. And wouldn't it be good to have others when the four of us are not available? So we started thinking, who else can become part of this circle? And it started to expand. We, called Madeline, her niece, at Families Forward, and Dawn Reese the thing grew. And I think the
Right.
text thread is up to like 13 now and growing. And we've gotten a little bit of exposure now. Some of us have been on magazine covers, and UCI recognized some of us that are alumni. And it really has become a just kind of a circle, a professional association,
Right.
a bond that we all do the same thing. We call on each other for professional advice. Hey, I need a new audit firm. You name it, we call on each other. Um, there are some I guess customs that have now when we go to each other's events, we now call each other out that we're there.
Yep.
Who knows where it will go?
I've seen many posts on LinkedIn after the fact with the
Yes,
crew there celebrating the organization
yeah,
and the sister in good that you're there to support, which is so unique and
it
special in my
is.
mind because how often do you see the CEO of a major organization, nonprofit organization, um, supporting and applauding the efforts of another nonprofit and another leader that normally you'd be thinking you're in competition with.
Yeah,
And I
no,
love the fact that that's not the environment that you all have created. It's a mutually supportive um, and not gripe
no.
organization or group. It's really just support system, lifting each other up and doing all sorts of amazing things.
What is it? All boats can rise, and that's the beauty of Orange County and the beauty, I think, of our friendship together. And it really makes the hard work easier when you can share the victories and sometimes the travails with people that get what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what has it done for you? I mean, what has that association, that group of supportive leaders, how has that collaboration helped you?
Well, I mean, it's often a place for referrals. I mean, if hey, have
That's
you
right, you
worked for
said that.
a
Yeah,
company? It's often a place where if somebody, if you're hiring, does anybody know this person? I mean, we are a tight group. It's a place for commiseration, good or bad, on a bad
yeah,
day. I think I mentioned back in January when everything
that's
changed, it
right.
was a little bit of let's hang on, let's all hold hands because the roller coaster is about to leave woo.
That's right.
Uh, it's a cause for celebration when one of us, gets allotted for something or gets a big grant, or when one of us loses a grant. So it's emotional support. I mean, again, I would fall short of calling it a sorority because it's not that. But it really is support like I've never had. When I worked in LA, when I tell my friends in LA that we go to each other's events, we know each other's donors. I mean, there's even an instance of some of us taking each other's donors to each other's events. My friends in LA don't believe it.
Right,
And
right.
so I really do think it stands as a testament that Orange County really is a different place, small enough for us to do this and big enough for us to understand that the pie is not limited, because it is a place of great affluence where we actually can do something here with all these different causes that are also interrelated. So I think it gives us all hope. That it's not a zero-sum game, that we're not in competition, and all
That's
those
it.
people that we're
Thank you.
trying to help, you
I think
know,
that's the brilliance of it,
yeah.
right? It's proof that it's not a zero-sum game.
It is not a zero-sum game. And, we were talking the other day about, this budget that's being passed, right? And whether you're talking about the cuts to SNAP or the cuts to Medicaid or the cuts to housing, we all went, wait, 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 wait. These are not organizations that are facing cuts. These are the same people that are
Right.
all going to be affected from different sides. So we all realize that it's not about our orgs. It's about the people that we serve. So it also helps us keep in mind what it is that we work for and what we fight for and what's really important in this work that we do. And it is the people that we serve.
Can we just end right there? I think we should, but no, that we can't. We should. Honestly, we should just say, okay, well, that's enough for today.
It's a wrap.
Because that was so well said and so perfect. But let's push our luck and ask one more question before we sign off. And that's just sort of what advice would you give would-be leaders, those that are currently leaders, those that are aspiring leaders, those that are thinking about leadership? I mean, what would you advise people? About developing or stewarding collaborations with other nonprofit leaders, or what other advice would you provide?
Wow, that's a lot of questions in one,
That's a
Chris. Well
broad
done.
question. Yeah, I should have more elegantly asked that question. What other advice
So,
would you offer?
yeah. So I tell young people that are thinking about the sector, because I get a lot of calls. I would definitely encourage people to get into this sector now more than ever. Number one, because the bright minds are needed.
Good.
It is an intellectually stimulating sector. And I often say, I attribute this quote to myself, by the way. I quote myself. I say, the problems that we face, if it were easy, if any of these problems were easy, government or the private sector would have figured it out a long time ago. So they've left it to us, right?
Right, right.
So definitely graduates, young people, anybody considering, come on in. We need you, and there's plenty of room, and there's good work to be done here. If you're in the sector and you're frustrated, hang in there,
Oh, good.
and do
Thank
and
you.
do and do collaborate, because I think that's where the joy comes in, where you meet like-minded people. And if you're frustrated because you're in your own org, or maybe feeling a little bit of tunnel, or like I'm in it, the best thing to do is to break out, call another colleague, another CEO, go to another event, or maybe move to another organization if you're frustrated where you are,
Yeah,
because there is good work being done. In 2014, I went and I got my master's degree at the ripe old age of 48, because I was feeling like, what more can I learn
good.
in this sector? So I got my master's in public administration, which is adjacent. I
Of
call it the
course.
MBA do-gooders. So educate yourself more in this work. And that gave me a whole new kind of take on the work that I was doing. And I often think about getting another degree in this work. So keep yourself stimulated in the work. And if you're collaborating and you're frustrated because the work moves slowly, I've got news for you. Collaborations move slowly. That's just the nature of collaboration, but
Okay,
that's
good.
okay. That's okay. Anything worth doing, move slowly, and measure progress at the speed of collaboration. You will get there.
That's great. That's so good. Well, thank you for turning my mediocre question into an extraordinarily good answer. That was awesome. And thank you, Claudia, for sharing such amazing expertise and wisdom that you've gained through your extraordinary career. I think the audience has a ton of great stuff to unpack and will no doubt leave the audience smarter for the journey that we just went on. And I'm excited for them to listen into this podcast and kind of learn and grow from what you've shared. But unfortunately, that brings us to the end of our podcast episode today. And just wanted to thank everyone for joining us. Please remember to subscribe to this podcast and this YouTube channel. There's also the Mastering Fundraising podcast that you might also want to check out. Both focus on conversations with extraordinary leaders in the nonprofit sector, and both offer that wisdom and guidance around very specific, useful topics. So until next time, we wish you all the best and encourage you all to do what you can for this world by leading for good. Thanks all.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for joining us for this most recent episode of Lead for Good. Our passion is helping nonprofit leaders reach their full potential as leaders, and we sincerely hope this episode has been edifying for you. Please subscribe to this podcast to not miss any of our Lead for Good conversations. We welcome your feedback, suggestions, and comments via email at hello@fulcrumleader.com. Lead for Good is a production of Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership. Please visit us on the web at www.fulcrumleader.com. Until next time, we wish you all the best and encourage you to always lead for good.